God'll get you for that one.
Maude is owned by Shout Factory.
God'll Get You for That, Walter is produced for entertainment purposes only.
Sponsored in part by Finley's Friendly Appliances. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of God'll Get You for That, Walter.
Yes, he will.
I was going to say, I was waiting for you to say something. My name is Tom Catt, and I am joined by my ever-lovely co-host, co-star, co-patriot, co-mother,
Co-mother.
Toni Homeperm.
That is I.
What a marvelous episode we just went over. This was The Convention, Season 1, Episode 14. It aired on January 2nd, 1973.
Yes, we made it to...
We made it to 1973.
Made it to a whole new year.
A whole new year.
Mm-hmm. Please, no, Disney will be demonetized. They'll take every last penny, even though there are no pennies.
There's no such
Yes.
thing as no pennies just yet.
Yes.
Working diligently towards
Yes.
that goal. So, this episode dealt with the Battle of the Sexes.
The Battle of the Sexes, yes.
Battle of the Sexes.
Yes.
We'll just dive right into the episode.
Mm-hmm.
We open on the John Smith Motel.
John Smith Motel.
John Smith Motel.
How fitting.
So Maude and Walter, they enter. This was the last hotel room that was available, which always struck me as bizarre. Now, I've gone to a number of conventions in my day, and usually if you're going to go to a convention, it doesn't matter whether it was like a year in advance or what have you. You would have a hotel room booked for you, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And especially because Walter at the time in this first season was a Maytag dealer, and he was an appliance salesman.
Yes.
Wouldn't you know that this convention was already happening? So why would you?
I know.
It was very bizarre how that happened.
Yeah, it was strange. It didn't really make any sense. But
I mean, that was the 70s.
For the sake of the episode and the jokes that they needed, it
worked. It served its purpose. So this was the last hotel room that was available to them at the John Smith Motel, and it was, pretty traditional, where it would be, where prostitutes would bring their tricks to,
or like somebody who's cheating on a spouse would be that. It was that type of a place. It was the kind of place where you rented the room by the hour.
Correct. There would be no over. It would be overnight, if it got that far.
And when you would do that, would you usually stay only 1 hour? Would you go to?
I'd go to. What type of lady do you take me for?
That ain't no lady.
That was no lady.
That was no lady.
Oh, God. So the episode continues. Maude is understanding because Walter's like, I apologize. This is the last room that they had available. So you take what you can get.
Yeah, of course.
And
they're gonna have drinks. So Walter, because the room had two twin beds.
Had two twin beds. They were not together. It was not a one queen sized mattress. But I mean, even at that time, they would still, there was no. Wasn't it? When did the separate beds stop being a thing?
Oh, I don't know. Way before then, I think.
Wasn't it? What? Oh, who was the first? I think it was Lucy.
They had twin beds,
but they were still together, weren't they? They were never together.
Never. If you go back and watch those episodes, you'll see that
it's two separate beds.
It's two separate beds. They were not allowed to be in the same bed. How she got pregnant, I don't have a clue. That Ricky must have been quite well endowed.
Those swimmers never stopped. Those swimmers never stopped swimming. But no, I could have sworn that was it the Dick Van Dyke Show then?
Could be.
Because I remember there was I distinctly remember it was a black and white show, and the husband and wife pushed the two beds together. And I think that might have been the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Could have been. We'll have to research.
If anybody would like to comment, go right ahead.
Or shoot us an email to
finleysfriendlyappliances@gmail.com.
We would love to know.
We would love to know, in fact.
Inquiring minds. So, Walter, he pushes the beds together, and Maude is like, "Oh, I love that you made the little bar.
What you did with the bar."
Yes. And so she gets the glasses, and she's like wondering, if maybe is it a
I want
hoax?
to point out something. When they first entered and whatnot, and were like getting themselves situated, Walter is very amorous.
Yes.
Walter's very. I think he says there's something about being in a motel that gives me wild ideas.
Yes.
And I think the joke is made where it's like, don't mention marriage; it'll give the place a bad name.
Exactly.
So it's very interesting that type of dynamic,
because that's the kind of place it was. It was sort of a seedy kind of like motel,
and it was very apparent the blinds were dirty, and the blinds were also the metal blinds. They weren't. There's no curtains, none of that. No. Very indicative of the place that it was, and they were in Worcester, Massachusetts.
Yes,
they were in Worcester, Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
So the episode continues. Maude then gets up and goes to the bar to take off the paper,
and she was wondering if is it a hoax? Are the glasses really clean, or do they just put clean paper?
Put clean paper around dirty
glasses?
Glasses, thank you.
Yes. And
then she mentioned how there was
the paper strip
on the toilet.
Yes, and Carol used to think when she was a little girl
that would prevent her from falling in.
I kind of thought that too. When I was a little kid.
I have never in my life seen a piece of paper over a toilet.
Oh, you haven't lived.
Clearly
you haven't lived.
Clearly, I have not lived.
The class of seedy hotels you've been staying in is,
I guess so. Just
not up to par.
Clearly the worst.
Clearly the worst. Oh my goodness.
So the episode does continue, and again, they're in a hotel. This is their first. It's almost like their first time together, without Carol, without Philip, without Arthur, without any sort of
no Florida,
no Arthur. This is an episode where it's just
and it's just
B and Bill Macy.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing about the episode. It's like that. It was just the two of them.
And I think that's only happened one other time in the series run. Mm-hmm. It was there was that episode, and then there was, I think, A Night to Remember, which was the final episode of the first season, if I remember correctly, where it was just these two actors going back and forth. And again, it only speaks to their ability as actors to make this two-person show work in that way.
Yes.
They did a really good job at it because it dealt heavily with a very serious issue at the time, which is still happening today.
Yes. But you know what? Probably because the past few episodes relied so heavily on so many different people coming in, coming out, that it's probably they sort of felt like they needed a break.
Yeah.
And just wanted to focus
on the relationship between Maude and Walter.
On Maude and Walter, because the previous episode.
It's also important to note that up until Maude, there really wasn't a sort of battle between husband and wife.
No.
Maybe on the honeymooners, but even then it was it never got to the same level.
No.
That Maude and Walter were at.
No.
And again, I just thoroughly appreciate that it was two actors working off of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of my takeaway on the episode, because when I started doing Maude Live, I was looking up different episodes to perform.
Right.
There was this one, obviously. There was another one where it was Maude, Walter, and Arthur. Mm-hmm. Another one where it was just Maude and Walter. And just being able to go back and forth with an actor, it's a great acting exercise.
Oh, sure.
This episode and also subsequent episodes where it's just the two, or maybe possibly third, it's a great acting exercise for individuals.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah. So the episode continues. And Maude and Walter, again, they're feeling amorous. They want to fool around, but Walter's we gotta go. We gotta get to this fancy schmancy dinner. It was an award ceremony.
Yes, the banquet dinner.
Banquet dinner,
banquet/awards dinner. Yes. That kind of convention kind of a thing for appliance salesmen,
for appliance
dealers, salesmen, whatever. And they're afraid they're going to miss the chicken a la king. And
yes, Maude does not want the chicken a la king. She wants Findlay a la king.
Was it Findlay or Walter a la king?
Findlay a la king.
Same thing.
So, it's two people that want to, get it on. I
Right.
can't blame them, but
Yes.
there were responsibilities that needed to be, protocol that needed to be followed.
Yes. So Walter, his idea is that they'll, get romantic when they get back.
Which
And
Maude comes back with,
that, you'll be too
you'll
sleepy.
be too sleepy. Which, 3 to 4 drinks, I too would be sleepy.
Yeah. If I drank like Walter, forget it. I'm
Hollowed like Findlay.
sleepy for the next, 2 nights. At least.
Yes.
But, yeah, I mean, all great plans, Yeah, there comes a time with age when it's like,
You have to plan it.
yeah, it's like,
You have to write it in the calendar.
yeah, okay. Well, how is Thursday for you? Oh, Thursday's no good for me. Thursday. Well, what about Friday? Well, Friday's good for me. Oh, wait, no, I've got a dental cleaning on Friday. That's no good.
Is this what I have to look forward to?
Absolutely.
Oh, great.
Absolutely.
Thoroughly enjoying that. Love that journey for me.
Gaze at the future. You're living at the future right now.
Thank you.
Right now, pussycat.
This
is your future,
so
right
confident,
here.
So confident.
Right
in
here.
all of that.
Read them.
But I mean, hey, you know what? And this is a conversation that's going to come up in other episodes where you're talking about age and sex. And, just because you're reaching a certain age does not mean that it just shuts down your sexuality and
No,
how
of
amorous
course
you
not.
are.
Of course
It's just human nature. So it's interesting to sort of gaze, no pun intended, into the future and be reminded that while, yes, you are older, you can still enjoy a good romping.
Of course.
Just
not as often. Not as frequently.
The frequency of lovemaking is nil.
After the love.
Sorry,
Before the
Engelbert parade passes by.
Sorry, Engelbert and Barbara. Now, of course, I love that Maude has to point out that Walter will be he'll be flat out on his back with his mouth open, making like gurgling noises.
And then Walter asks, "I snore?"
Yeah.
To which Maude responds, "Yes, you do snore and snort and whistle.
Right.
You are a festival of weird noises.
Yes.
Oh my goodness gracious! There were a lot of like good lines from Maude in this episode.
Yes.
Like very. It was a very well written script for the time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I think that's about where Maude now starts feeling sorry for herself, right?
Did we mention that Walter had set an alarm for 12:30?
Oh, that's right.
That when they come back, they'll have their lovemaking
That's
session.
right.
They'll have their date. They call it a date.
They call it a
date.
Date. As I make
the
rabbit ears.
Quotation marks.
Date. Quotation mark. Yes, we're calling it a date. Okay.
They're going to make the beasts with 2 backs. That's what they're going to do.
Yes.
Yes. So 12:30 is their date. Obviously, the dinner is going to take as long as it's going to take. But when they come back from the dinner, that is when they are going to have the copulations.
Yes. Well, that sort of takes all the romance of the copulation. That takes the romance right out of it. Oh, my goodness.
Well, I mean, it was the 70s, and this is a homely pair of people, so copulate is the word that we're going to use.
Oh, my God.
I can say that because I impersonate the broad, okay?
Oh, Lord.
So, the episode continues, the alarm is set, the stage is set for everything, and then Maude asks Walter very innocently, "Are you happy I came?"
Right, yeah.
Which, I mean, all of this truly could have been avoided had Maude not asked to go, because that was what happened. Maude ended up going with Walter on because she asked her husband, "Do you want me to come along with you on the trip?"
Yeah.
And Walter's like, "Of course I want you to come." What was he going to say? "Nah, I don't want you to come along."
Right.
Like, Walter is progressive enough to know, like, yes, I would want people to meet my wife. Like, this is someone that I love and adore.
Right.
I want to show off to people.
But the thing is, he never asked her because he knew she would hate it. Which she did.
Which she did. There was no hiding that she hated this.
So, it's kind of like, I think it was more like, she really didn't want to go. But she did want to be asked.
She still wanted to be asked.
She still wanted to be asked. So.
Because I am sure, had he asked, she would have said no.
Right.
But
if she didn't have to prompt him to ask, if he had just done it on his own.
It's one of those real... communication in a relationship is king here, friends. We want to make that perfectly clear.
Actually, it's queen. Not king. Communication is queen.
Communication is queen.
At least on this podcast. I don't know about any others, but on this podcast, communication is queen.
So it really, hearkening back to Maude's dilemma, like the communication between Maude and Walter about making the decision to terminate the pregnancy.
Yeah, whether or not to have the baby.
It was a constant I want what my husband wants. Well, I want what my wife wants. And they never, the wires don't cross.
Right.
And it's sort of similar in this instance where, Maude doesn't want to go, but because Walter isn't asking her, she's sort of saying, ask me so I can say no, still make me feel involved.
Exactly.
And that's...
Because this is part of Maude's current dilemma, is not feeling valued
and fulfilled.
Yeah. And, we find out that she's actually been looking for a job because she wants, to be fulfilled. And she says everything is either she doesn't have the experience or she's too old, and all she really is now is a 47-year-old sex kitten. I wouldn't mind that. Actually,
but
I'd be happy with that.
I mean, during that time, this was at the height of the women's liberation movement in the 70s, and for a woman like Maude to put herself out there and constantly be denigrated to this 47-year-old sex kitten when she is a college graduate, she has a degree in Romance languages, and she's saying, I am overqualified and underused. And that is very prevalent in today's society, where you'll have the degrees, and I'm not even talking about people of her age, I'm talking about people my age and younger, where you have the degrees, but they want someone with more experience. Well, how are you going to get the experience if you're not being given the opportunity to try?
Right. Yeah.
And that's that. I know exactly how she's feeling in this instance because she's a woman of a certain age and she wants to feel some type of value and fulfillment.
Right. Right. And of course, this still happens.
Oh, very much so.
But they'll, find ways to
soften the blow.
Yeah. Or they sort of disqualify people without it being overt.
Yeah.
That's the reason that they're disqualified.
Not to divulge too much pertinent information, but my father was looking to retire soon, and he lives with me and my siblings and my wife,
your wife,
and his wife. That dyslexia knows no bounds, apparently. So, we all live under the same roof, and we all contribute and whatnot. And he is trying to potentially find an alternative occupation,
right,
in the area because he's so sick and tired of the commute.
Right.
Which anybody who goes back and forth into the city knows the commute is the biggest pain in the neck.
Horrible.
But with that said, he's now in a market where there's a lot of younger people.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is based in who you know, what circles you fall into, and just, it's challenging. So I can only, one of the things that my father has always told me is that I should get a job. Get a job, get a job, get a job, get a job, get a job. Okay, how many times are you going to say that before you realize getting a job in today's society is incredibly difficult? Because you need to have 10 years experience plus a degree plus all of these things, and it's very, very challenging. Especially if you're, when you add on to the fact of a person of a certain age, all of these things need to be taken into consideration.
Right.
So, part of me just wants to say, welcome to the workforce, good luck.
Yeah. Because
what you're telling me, I'm going to be telling you. It's very, very challenging. So,
and nowadays, in order to apply for something, I mean, everything is online. You rarely get to meet somebody
face to face.
It's essentially you're judged on your resume.
Yeah, heavily on your resume.
I mean, and something just not even using the right font can disqualify
be a detriment.
You. Even if you were the perfect candidate for the position, So it's it's
very challenging.
very challenging.
So I can only imagine how hard it must have been for a woman, especially who's of a certain age.
Yeah.
And we know at this point we know Maude's age. She's 47 years old.
Yep. 47-year-old sex kitten.
So being a 47-year-old woman looking for a job, having a degree, and still being met with prejudice and still being met with ageism.
Right.
So this is a very poignant episode, despite the fact that the ending is a little hairy. But we'll get to that in a moment.
Yes.
So
it'll be more than a moment before we get to the end.
Oh, absolutely.
Maude is being very dramatic. Walter points out that she's Joan Crawford.
And I'll Cry Tomorrow.
I'll Cry Tomorrow. And Maude, of course, points out that that's actually Susan Hayward, not Joan Crawford.
Well, because she wanted, as a woman, as a 47-year-old woman in the 70s, she wants her own identity.
Right.
Because for the longest time, people were always referred to as Mrs. the husband's first and last name.
Right. They didn't really have their own identity.
They didn't have their own identity. Yeah. So you were known as Mrs. Walter Findlay. You were known as Mrs. So-and-so. And like, there was never any ownership of a woman's name because it was always the husband's name.
Yeah, it was sort of like the woman was property of the man.
Subservient.
Yeah.
very subservient to the man.
Yes.
And that's...
She goes on a tirade about, being, him saying, like, my wife. And her, talking about how
ownership and control.
She's been Barney's wife. She's been
Andy's wife. And...
she couldn't remember the last
I mean, the other husband's name was Chester.
Chester.
But what's-his-name will also work in a pinch.
Of course.
So it's... The conversation of ownership and being a husband's property and women in relation to being a husband's property is a theme that is touched upon many times on Maude. Because that was the goal. Like,
right.
Norman Lear wanted to create this sort of aggressive feminist type character that would, like, turn all of these ideas of being a woman on its ear.
Yes.
Yes. I am eternally grateful for that because without it, I would not have a career.
Thank goodness. So they actually they're fighting so loudly that somebody in the next room actually bangs on the wall, knocks the painting down off the wall,
which I don't think was intentional.
Really?
I do not think that was intentional.
Oh, that's funny.
I think that might have just happened because, and I'm sure the director was just like, keep it, that works, just keep it that way.
And at one point, Walter's, he's trying to get them out the door to the banquet, and he slaps on the name tag on Maude, which, of course, is Mrs. Walter Findlay. She doesn't even get to be,
But there was, there was even a conversation before that where they were talking about farm animals.
Oh, yes.
Walter was like, there was mention of cows and bulls and chickens and roosters.
Yes,
it was very bizarre.
Yes, because he was talking about how, she was going to make them late. And then it's always the woman.
Oh, it's always the woman that makes the
man late. It's like, the expression isn't, till the cows, till the cows come home.
That's what it was. That was the trigger.
The expression is,
it was not
waiting for the
till
cows
the bulls come home.
Yeah, it's not about bulls and,
And then Walter even went on to say, like, who wakes everybody up at the crack of dawn? It's the rooster, not the hen.
Not the hens.
And Maude just gives what a brilliant singer, and I think it was...
She tells it, well, you lay the eggs, and I'll yell cock-a-doodle-doo, something to that effect. Right?
If you want to lay... oh my goodness, I have it written down, and of course my handwriting is god
atrocious. It's atrocious.
Chicken scratch.
Which is actually apropos.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you. If you want to lay the eggs, I'll get up at the crack of dawn and cock-a-doodle-doo.
Exactly.
And again, that is a common theme in the episode where it is sort of a battle of the sexes. Mm-hmm. So, yes. Mm-hmm. He slaps the button on her.
Yeah.
I think even before, she takes it and throws it in the trash. Mm-hmm. And Walter goes, well, now no one's going to know who you are.
No one knows who you are.
And Maude goes, then it'll be unanimous. No one will know who I am. Right. It's fine. That's exactly how I want to be. Very melodramatic.
Yes. Very.
Very melodramatic. And that triggers the guy on the other room to bang on the wall.
Yes.
And knock the painting down.
And now Walter points out that, she's been a help to him. she's worked at the store, like at Christmas. Of course, we come to find out that I guess Maude was playing Santa and looking for shoplifters.
If not Maude playing Santa, she was behind the register.
Yes.
And there was one person that she called because Walter was trying to, talk her up and make her feel important.
Right.
Saying, well, you helped catch that one woman, the shoplifter, who was like trying to hide, what was it, a transistor clock radio?
Alarm clock radio.
Alarm clock radio or something?
Yes.
And then Maude goes, it was so easy, her cleavage was ticking.
Yes.
So, again, this is Maude pleading with her husband, saying, hey, this is how I'm feeling. Just acknowledge that there is this sort of disconnect between man and woman, and just let's have this open, honest conversation. And Walter's like, I don't want to have this conversation. I need to get to the dinner.
Right.
So it was that, it's just a constant back and forth. And Walter's a bit of an ass in this episode.
You think?
A little bit. I will say this, Maude was very overdramatic on a number of issues. But, I mean, if you take into consideration how women were treated back then, it stands to reason that she would feel very strongly about the being titled as property of a man.
Yes. Yes.
So...
But the thing is, I mean, he asked her to come with him to this convention. She knew it was important to him. She knew he wanted to get to the banquet dinner.
Yes.
She could have, held off until they got back.
But she wouldn't have been Maude if that was the case.
That wouldn't be
Maude. That would be Donna Reed.
And besides, she was still gonna lay. She was still gonna lay into him when they got back. Anywho.
Oh yeah, that was.
Anyway.
So yes, they leave to go, and of course, as they're leaving, Maude is very robotic as she looks down and notices the button and says, "Hello, my name is Mrs. Walter Finley." And as they're getting ready to leave, she's just like bouncing. Yes. Very, very physical comedy. Yes. Like again, one of the reasons why I love Maude is because it was able to showcase B. Arthur's physical comedy. Also worth pointing out, the blinds were a big point of contention.
Yes, they fought with the blinds.
Maude was fighting with the blinds a lot. I don't really know the artistic significance of that. It could just be a woman getting more and more angry and taking her frustrations out on the blinds. There was that. There was also the magic fingered mattress.
Oh yes, I forgot about that.
Which also made because Maude was like, "Hey, this mattress is equipped with magic fingers. Let's see how it works." And when you might know this better than I do, when were vibrating mattresses brought into vogue?
Definitely in the 70s.
Okay.
I can remember as a little kid, we went somewhere, and the bed had the magic fingers.
And you would put a quarter in, and it would it would vibrate your pains away.
Of course, whenever I see them now, all I can think of is that Golden Girls episode
where they go to the hotel.
That hotel at that sort of.
Another sleazy, scuzzy motel.
Yeah, really bad. It's sort of tropical place, and they put the money in.
What was the name of that actor?
Oh, I can't remember his name.
He
came in. And he's like puts.
He was one of the Latin kings of comedy.
Yes, he puts his foot on the mattress and he
starts shaking it, singing Guantanamera.
Guantanamera, yes. I would have kind of liked that.
What, having somebody step on your mattress constantly, or actually a bed that vibrates?
No, like somebody, when you put the money in that, somebody comes in.
Oh yeah, I'd really love that. That's
shaking the bed and singing Guantanamera. I would put in 2 quarters for that.
As long as they looked, appropriate to you.
Yes.
Dark olive skin, abs, very chiseled jaw. Oh, I know what type of man you like.
Yeah. Like you wouldn't let him in.
I'm not saying we're not talking about me now, are we?
Methinks the lady doth protest too much.
I'd let him in.
Yeah, I know.
I would let him in.
I know, pussy.
So at that point, we come back from a commercial break.
Yes.
And Maude enters in a fit of rage.
Yeah, you can tell.
Now, one of the beautiful things is that B. Arthur, as a physical comedy actress in this series, did a lot of things with her facial expressions and her body that would lead you to just laugh uncontrollably. And this was one of those things where she was just slamming the suitcase open, like just being a tornado in the worst possible sense of the word, and just doing everything that she can in such an overdramatic and angry way that you really just have to stop and say, "KB, calm down a little bit. Just you're up here, bring it down to here." But there is a very good reason as to why she is the tornado that she is right now.
Yes.
So Walter comes in. They're not speaking.
No.
They are not speaking, and they are just they're coexisting as best as they possibly can, just despite what happened.
And I love one of the first things she does is the beds that have been pushed together.
She separates them.
She pushes them right apart.
She pushes them right apart. So Walter enters, and he starts fumbling with the blinds, which before the commercial break, I think Walter or Maude slams the door closed and the blinds fall.
The blinds fell off.
The blinds fell off. So Walter starts to get undressed, and then he starts fumbling with the blinds.
Right.
Maude asks him, "What are you doing?" And then Walter, of course, comes back and says, "I thought you weren't talking to me." But Maude, being Maude, asks, "Yes, and? I'm not talking to you. What are you doing?"
And he's like, he doesn't want anybody to see, and she's like,
"No one's going to see anything anyway.
There's nothing happening tonight.
Nothing is happening
for
tonight.
anybody to see."
So the two of them are just. I think it also starts when Maude looks at the award that Walter had gotten. I think it was top 10 dealer award, second runner up.
Yes,
big man, and then she slams the trophy on the counter, and Walter just picks it up and holds it close to himself because he's a toddler apparently, and that's his security blanket.
I mean, I would feel that way if anybody did something to one of my awards. I'm pointing to a little thank you award that I got.
Everything but the white horse, huh, Ma?
Yes. Everything.
So, Maude wants to leave, and she
wants the keys.
She wants the keys.
She wants the keys to the car. She wants to take a drive, and Walter wants to know what's bugging her, and that's when she brings up his acceptance speech.
But Walter, whether or not he was playing dumb, didn't want to address the speech, because of course Maude is like, "I'm angry at you." And again, another common theme in the episode it's another common theme of the show where Walter is always wrong and Maude is always right. And that's very accurate here because Maude is like, "I'm angry at you and you better know why or else."
Yes.
And Walter's like, "But I don't know why you're mad. Why are you mad?"
Yeah.
And we come to find out that after a fun back and forth, Maude wants Walter to make his acceptance speech. And Walter relents. He's like, "I don't want to talk." It's almost like he really did not want to address the speech. And just Maude is like, "No, you make your acceptance.
Give your acceptance.
Give your acceptance speech." And he does it. "I want to thank everybody. Thank you."
Yes.
That was the speech. But that was clearly not it.
That was not it.
So Maude says, "No, that's not what you said. Do one more time. Remember this time. Remember, Walter." So Walter goes, "This top 10 dealer award is a really big deal to me. I want to thank my publicist. I want to thank my employees. I want to thank all these people. But most of all, I want to thank my wife."
My wife. And she's like,
and you would think that would have been the end, but it was not. So
that's not what he said.
That's not what he said.
And she said, and she tells him, "That's not what you said."
So Walter takes a step back and he's like during his speech, you see in Bill Macy's face, he now realizes what he did.
What he said, yes.
So he stops and goes, "I want to thank the little woman."
The little woman.
And the audience erupts with laughter for two reasons. One, B. Arthur is a tall woman.
She was not, by any means, a little woman.
And just the face where she's biting her lips. She's she's pursing her lips together, and she is just none too pleased with that statement.
And she says, "When I stood up, they laughed for 5 minutes."
I think my favorite line was, Walter, when you called me the little woman, I almost lost my cherries jubilee. I'm surprised. Like, I'm kind of. You only see desserts like that when you go to diners.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I've ever seen anybody serve cherries jubilee.
I don't even know if you even they have cherries jubilee on a diner menu these days.
Only with Ben and Jerry's.
Yeah.
I think Ben and Jerry's has something called cherries jubilee.
Actually, it's Cherry Garcia.
That's what it was. Cherry Garcia.
Cherry Garcia.
Shows you what I know.
Yes.
But again, you won't see like Bananas Foster. You won't see Cherries Jubilee. You won't see Orange Julius. Yes. You don't see desserts like that anymore.
Yes. And Maude, she said something about, I guess, she has said something like after that about,
So after that, she
being
Walter came back and said, just because I called you the little woman, that didn't mean you could stand up and say, hello, my name is Louisa May Alcott. Which is hysterical because to those who don't know, Little Women was written
by Louisa
May Alcott. So Maude was very distraught. Yes. Maude was naturally very distraught.
Mm-hmm. And they were going on and on about it was a lot of back and forth.
Definitely a lot of back and forth.
Ranting and raving on
very much a lot of ranting. But even so, there were like some really great lines in that in that dialogue. Like Walter had said, we have to get to bed early, so I have to be up tomorrow to find out to have that
There was a
seminar on what to do with your microwave
oven. Yes, and Maude said she had a few suggestions of what Walter could do.
Do I have a suggestion for you?
With the microwave oven.
And again, to hear something like that, because obviously, Maude is saying, you can shove your microwave oven is what you can do.
Yeah, you can shove it up your ass.
You can shove it, and that'll be the end of it. And again, I love... That is one of the things that I love most about writing for sitcoms back. I don't want to say back in the day, but for sitcoms in the 50s and 60s and 70s, like that, alluding to just, I'm trying to think of the right way to say it, but that way of writing where you're saying things through innuendo. I love innuendo. Yes. I love double entendres.
Yes.
And, you see a lot of that because there was a lot you could not get away with. And there was a lot you couldn't say back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it tickles me. It did tickle me.
It tickles.
So Walter is again saying how, I think even before the commercial, Walter was saying things like, I create the complaints for women because I give them the appliances and then they will go from the kitchen into the living room and will complain to their husbands that they have nothing to do.
Right.
Because the appliances make things easier for women.
Easier for them. Yeah.
And again, that conversation of, women are meant to stay at home and be domestic goddesses and keep house and cook and clean and sew and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Really male chauvinism at its finest, kids.
Yep. Very true. So Walter just wants to go to bed.
Walter at this point just wants to go to bed.
Yes.
And there was a big rant. So Walter initially, I think, is in the bathroom, and Maude is preparing to get herself undressed into her nightgown, and she goes in this wonderful, wonderful rant of a woman having to stay at home after waking her husband up that she needs to fold the clothes, put them away, make herself look presentable, get her husband off to work, make the bread, just do all of these things.
Right.
And then a woman can just loll around at home and wait for Stuff the Stars because it doesn't come on until 10 o'clock.
Right.
And this was Walter's idea of being a woman, where you do all of these things for your husband and then you can just sit at home and do nothing. And if I tell you, it was very similar for me at home.
Yeah.
Because my mother would be at home, she would be preparing dinner, she would be taking care of the laundry, she would be doing all of these domestic tasks. And when my father comes home, he's like, oh, well, what did you do all day? You sat down and watched your stories. Oh. And even to this day, it's even affected how my brother views my mother, how my sister views. And I'm just like, my mother's still a person. There is still a human under that mother title you give her. She is still a person.
Right.
As you get older, this idea of responsibility shifts.
Mm-hmm.
Because the mother is not always supposed to cook.
Right.
Especially if the mother is working constantly.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're working and you're doing the thing, you can't do it all.
Right.
There is no physical way for you to have a full-time job, come home, make dinner, make a bed, make lunch. It's very challenging.
Well, nowadays, it's not commonplace for the wife to be a stay-at-home wife and mother.
No, not anymore.
Most people can't afford it. Most people depend on, both the husband and the wife. Especially if they have kids. Even if they don't, they need both incomes just to
stay
survive.
alive, just to stay afloat.
Yeah,
I mean, back then it was. It was easy to be a trophy wife because your husband was making all of the money.
The husband made the money, and the wife, stayed home, took care of the home.
Yep.
Took care of
and
the
nowadays,
kids.
unless you're like a doctor or a lawyer with a lot of great paying clients, it's challenging to you need a dual income home in order to stay afloat in this economy. So it's, it speaks to the progression that has been made in terms of what it means to be a woman and what it means to be a man.
Yeah.
But it's unfortunate that these ideas are still ingrained in us from years prior.
Yeah. And a lot of what Maude was lamenting about, a lot of women, in that time period were feeling the same thing. That, because that's when, women's liberation was starting, and, credence was being given to women's rights. And, of course, we saw that in Maude's dilemma, that, women, finally having control over their own bodies.
Yeah.
Which up until, that point, it was like...
It was still up to the husband. It was still up to the father.
A woman became pregnant and she was trapped. And now that was, no longer the case. So Maude was expressing what a lot of women were feeling at that, during that time frame. That they didn't have to just be a wife and mother. They didn't just have to be, a Mrs. Husband's first name, husband's last name. They could be their own person.
Yeah.
So that's what
that's what more facilitated. That was what a lot of and again, this conversation comes up multiple times in Maude.
Yeah.
Multiple times because that was just what was being discussed at that time.
Yes.
Maude
was not Mrs. Cleaver.
No.
And she was not Donna Reed.
No, she was not. Despite the fact that she tried endlessly to be Donna Reed. But only when it suited her needs and not the needs of her husband.
That's right.
Like, whenever a party was thrown, she would walk around like who she was. She was again, domestic goddess.
When she wanted Arthur to buy them out of the slum.
Yes.
She was
in the episode.
Hors d'oeuvre, Arthur. Swedish meatball. And
a couple of extra goodies I whipped up for you. Just for you. Like,
then it was okay to be like, Donna Reed.
Which again, it only stands to point out the hypocrisy of it all. So it's all like, again, that's one of the reasons why I personally love Maude so much, is because it will just sort of take these ideas and just juxtapose them. And point out the hypocrisy of it all.
So Maude Walter was trying to sleep. She decided she was going to read, right?
It was. Wait, hold on. Now I'm trying to figure it out, because I think when Maude does her monologue, she then goes into the bathroom to get dressed. Walter comes out, and Walter is now making his case for how being a man is also not that easy.
Yes.
Having to get up early to go to work. Like, you have the right to get fired, to have a heart attack and die 10 years before your wife does.
Yes.
And he was making sense.
Yeah, it was valid points.
He was making some valid points. It's just, there's still that disconnect between what makes a man and what makes a woman a woman.
Yeah. Because along with women's liberation, there was also, came along with it, was human liberation. That, women didn't have to be these, stereotypical roles, but also men also do
There
not
was a
have to
shift.
be
There was a paradigm shift.
those stereotypical roles of being the breadwinner and the man goes out to work.
Yeah.
It was like, you could very easily say, well, it would be okay for the woman to go out to work and the man to stay at home and take care of the house and take care of the kids, which,
That became more prominent in the 80s, I think.
True.
I definitely think that became more the norm in the 80s.
But the seeds
were planted. The seeds were planted in the 70s, absolutely.
Yeah.
They were 100%. 100%. But yeah, that was the conversation that was being had.
But she does read the Bible at some point.
She does read the Bible, so
a few lines anyway.
they've obviously been fighting for the last little bit. Like Walter did his monologue, Maude did her monologue, and then as Walter tries to go to sleep, Maude's like, "I can't sleep.
Right.
I'm not coming to bed."
Right.
And she says, Walter's like, "Well, what are you going to do?" Maude's like, "I'm going to read." So Maude goes into the little drawer, which I don't know how many hotels still do that.
A lot still do.
Really? Because I remember briefly that not only did some hotels have the Bible, but they also had the Torah and the Quran that you were able to read in certain hotels.
Never seen that. I've seen the Bible.
I remember that was I remember that being a big discussion, I think, in the mid-2000s?
Mm-hmm.
Mid to late 2000s? Before 2010. I know it happened between 2000 and 2009. That conversation was had. But Maude starts reading it and says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens." She closes it and says, "Darn, I read it already."
Yeah.
Which, I don't think she read it for a second.
No.
I really believe that. I really don't think that she read it for a second.
And she's, again, lamenting about her unfulfilled life.
Yes, she is. And Walter's like, "All right, enough.
Yeah.
Enough is enough. I'm tired of hearing about this." Which, as Maude goes, that does happen a lot, where Maude will just continue to lament and will continue to
rant and rave. And,
she'll do her soliloquies.
Yeah.
And Walter, more often than not, will listen to it up until a point.
Yes.
It really is, again, that sort of, I don't want to call it battle, but that constant man versus woman talk where the woman is trying to plead and make the husband understand, and the husband's like, "I'm tired of trying to understand, I just want to go to bed."
It's like when I finally had enough of hearing about the wig that my husband can't tease the way he wants it to be. And after 4 days of it, I'm like, "Please, enough!
And then
enough about the wig!"
And he figured it out. And I'm so proud of him.
Oh my God.
So
Walter says that now it's time for silence.
That's right. Walter I think tries to start the conversation with being in love or being with your partner means that you know when it's time for silence and when you know it's time for discussion. And this is a time for silence. And Maude, through grit teeth, goes, "Of course this is a time for silence. Because you say so, because you are the man and I am the woman." And that starts a very interesting bit of dialogue.
Yes.
Where Walter goes, "And it's a good thing you're a woman, because if you weren't, I'd punch you right in the nose."
Man, I'd punch you, yeah.
Which, if ever a man said to me, "I'm going to punch you in the nose," that would be considered assault. If someone's gonna even with the Honeymooners, where Ralph Cran would pull back and to the moon, Alice.
Yeah.
Little bit
I don't think Ralph ever made a fist, though.
No,
I don't think
Why
so.
do I remember him? Why do I remember him introducing his hand a number of times.
I'm trying to remember. I don't ever remember a fist, though. It may have been hand movement, but I don't ever remember a fist.
Maybe a hand movement, or some type of gesture involving the hand.
Yeah, I don't think he ever made a fist. That'd be interesting to
rewatch.
To see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yes.
Once we're done with Maude, we can focus on the honeymoon.
Yes. That'll be in the year 2000.
So
we'll be in the nursing home at that point. Well, I will.
You'll be in the nursing home at that point.
You have to come once a week.
Did they medicate you accordingly?
You'll be like, can you give him a shot of adrenaline to get through this podcast?
The B12, just give him 2 of those. 2 B12s.
Yes.
So,
God.
Obviously, it is worth noting that if your partner is being physically abusive, that we strongly suggest that you call a hotline, reach out for help, reach into your support system. This is commonplace. This information is readily available to a number of people. Whether your husband, wife, partner, significant other is being physically or verbally abusive to you, there is help out there for you.
Yes.
And that's your public service announcement for this episode of Nothing
Yes.
At You, Walter.
That is it.
Goodness. Moving forward, Maude is now taunting Walter.
They're really revved up.
It is a very tense moment. As a matter of fact,
it's like fever pitch.
When I was doing Maude Live, I had suggested the convention, and I mentioned this in episodes prior. One of the reasons we did not do the convention was because of this very moment in this episode, where it is very... it's abusive. There's a lot of taunting. There's a lot of physical, and Walter's even winding up to punch, and Maude is pointing at the nose. It's a very tense, very driven scene.
She was really taunting him.
Very much taunting him, calling him a chicken, calling him like you say you're not prejudiced against women. Punch me in the nose, just
prove you're not prejudiced.
Prove your masculinity by hitting me in the face.
Prove you think that you really feel that women are equal.
Correct.
And punch me in the nose. Which
bit of a scene.
Yeah.
Definitely one of the more dramatic scenes in this episode.
And that's
at that moment
the alarm clock goes off.
To
remind them of their
tryst.
Date.
Their tryst.
Date.
They're dating.
Their date.
That's what they're calling it.
Or copulation. So
copulation.
Lovingly referred to it
as. And I will refer to that as such for the rest of the series.
The copulation, yes.
And Walter immediately jumps into bed with a big poop eating grin on his face, saying it's 12:30. We have a date.
We have a date.
And Maude's like, I understand, and I'm standing you up.
Standing you up. See, because men can do it any time.
Men can do it whenever they want.
Whenever they want.
It's right there.
It's like we were just fighting, and now we can have sex.
Now we can have sex again.
Yes.
Passion. It's passionate. Passionate lovemaking.
But of course, there is something to be said about make-up sex.
Correct.
You've had a fight. I mean,
the best part of breaking up is when we're making up. The best part of breaking up. Yeah.
Why was I thinking of I was thinking of the coffee commercial. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
Oh my graciousness. I love that song. I'm going to listen to that song later today.
Oh my god.
But that is what happens. Walter's still amorous as he was in the beginning, and he's like, I'm ready when you are, and Maude's like, you've got to be kidding.
Willing and able.
You've got to. I would feel the same way. We're fighting, and you excuse me.
Well, I would give in.
We know you would. You would drop. Drop faster than CBS dropped Jimmy the Greek.
That's right. All right. We can go back to fighting after. So Maude, she goes to the other bed.
She starts taking the sheets off. Right. She starts taking her nightgown. Not her nightgown.
Her negligee.
Not her negligee. It was what she wore over the nightgown.
The robe.
Thank you. Her kimono.
Yes.
She takes off her robe kimono.
It was interesting to note that in her peignoir ensemble, she even had a scarf around her neck. Who wears a scarf to bed?
She does.
But she did.
I definitely feel that something happened to B, whether it was a thyroid issue, whether she was just uncomfortable showing her neck. But in Golden Girls, her neck was always shown.
Yeah.
But in Maude, she always wore a scarf or an ascot or I wanted to say espadrille.
No, that's a
shoe. That's a shoe.
That's a shoe. Totally wrong end of the stick. Literally the wrong end of the stick.
Yes, I do not know where or why I said the word espadrille.
It's such a cool word.
It's such a cool word to say.
It's Espadrille.
But it's interesting just to note the costume change from Maude to Golden Girls.
Yes. Oh.
But, she would wear these, like, very frumpy frocks, but beautiful color. Like, it was a very pretty periwinkle, a lilac situation.
Yeah, I think it was lilac. It was beautiful.
And she's, like, throwing it on her bed, and then immediately jumps into bed with Walter.
Yeah.
Which I thought was
Here you thought she was,
she was getting ready to get into her bed, and that was not the case.
Yeah.
And they're holding on to each other, and, like, Maude finally relents and says,
one thing we forgot was didn't Maude, when Walter first got into the bed, didn't Maude point out that we always say we'd never go to bed angry?
Yes. We'd never go to bed angry. And Walter's like, oh, yes, you're right. We did miss that. And that was what triggered the entire argument.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, why can't I remember now?
And Walter said, well, he wasn't angry.
He wasn't angry. You stay away.
Right, you stay awake.
And that was what triggered Maude to say, fine, I'll read.
Yeah.
And she reads the Bible. Mm-hmm. Then she, I think, gets back into bed and says, Walter, can we please discuss this? Mm-hmm. And Walter, like, he doesn't relent, but he's like, there's whatever... what did he say? I think he said something to the lines of, I'm ready, I'll discuss things that I think... something to the effect of, we'll discuss what I want to discuss and not what you want to discuss. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what triggered Maude to say, well, then there's nothing to talk about. What you want to talk about, I don't want to talk about. Mm-hmm. What I want to talk about, you don't. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of what that's what sets the wheels in motion for the big fight at the end.
Right.
Where he ends up saying, like, Maude, being in love means never have, like there's a time for silence and a time for talking, and this is a time for silence.
It's almost like in Love Story, love means never having to say you're sorry.
Exactly.
Stupidest line ever uttered in a movie.
Terrible line.
Yes.
Terrible line.
Do you remember in the movie What's Up, Doc? Mm-hmm. When Ryan O'Neal, he says that to Barbra Streisand.
And I remember reading a comment on YouTube saying how when Ryan O'Neal stated that line, the entire theater erupted in laughter.
Yes.
Because he said it in Love Story.
Yes.
So,
but when he said it, he says it to Barbara in What's Up, Doc, and she's like, "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." It's like hysterical.
And I mean, I love that. I love that so much because again, it points out the hypocrisy of a line, and I love when writers do something like that. That makes me very happy.
So, but when Maude finally relents and gets into bed with Walter,
yes.
Now they're being romantic, and she
this
points
is my
out
role.
That she is the sex kitten.
She is a sex kitten.
So, which I can really relate to. Being the sex kitten,
and how I'm sure you can relate.
I'm 13 years younger than my husband, so I always point out to him that I am the trophy wife.
Yes, you are.
And I have a trophy.
And you have the trophy that says
I'm pointing at it right now. You can't see, but I'm pointing to my trophy right now.
But there was something that I wanted to point out, and I actually have it written down.
Which is?
Where, before, I don't know if it was before the commercial break or after, when Maude was still in that blue blousey top and her white skirt.
Wasn't that was her slip?
Her white slip, I'm so sorry. Yeah, that was her slip. She goes, you're being productive when someone is paying you.
Oh, yes.
And Walter comes back at her and says, I'll pay you $5 to get dressed.
Yes.
Which triggers a very long pause.
Yeah.
And her delivery of her infamous line, God will get you for that, Walter. So I do want to point that out before we bring this puppy in for a landing.
Oh, my goodness.
So... Maude and Walter obviously
makeup.
Mm-hmm. That is apparent.
Yes.
It is not. Oh, they go into the "I love you." Like, do you love me?
Yeah.
Maude saying, "What is this fiddler on the roof?" Which, of course, is funny because Maude originated the role of Yenta in.
I didn't know that.
She was the original matchmaker. Original matchmaker. Yeah, she was originally. She was the original Yenta the matchmaker in Fiddler on the Roof.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Did not know that.
Well, you learn something new every day.
Something new every day. Something new every day.
So Walter goes, Maude, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And Maude goes, if you really loved me, you would have punched me in the nose.
Yes.
So they go back and forth for a little bit, and then the episode finally does come to its end where the two of them copulate.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the word we're using.
Yes.
And we cut to the epilogue.
Hideous word.
That's a terrible word.
Terrible word.
Terrible word for lovemaking. So the episode does come to its frenzied conclusion,
Yes.
and now we come to the epilogue,
Mm-hmm.
where they're getting ready to leave, and the owner of the hotel
Mm.
wants to get a picture of Maude and Walter.
Yeah. Why? Because...
They were actually married.
Yeah, because they were really married.
They were a real married couple, which
And
clearly
which
has
is-
never graced the doorways of the John Smith
Right,
Motel.
the John Smith Motel is not used to real, actual married couples copulating in the rooms.
So it was a very tongue-in-cheek ending to the episode. And with that comes to the end of another episode of God Will Get You for That Walter. If you would like to hear us more, if you would like to find out more about us, you can on our Facebook page at God Will Get You for That Walter. You can find us on Instagram at Finley's Friendly Appliances. You can email us, as we've mentioned in this episode, at finleysfriendlyappliances@gmail.com. If you would like to follow me, you can at ThatTomcat or ThatTomcat.com. I am everywhere, darling.
She's everywhere. They can also follow the podcast on our YouTube channel.
That's right, on our YouTube channel. Also,
God'll Get You for That Walter.
Yep.
They can follow me at ToniHomeperm.com, and it's Tony with an I. Thank you.
I was waiting for it.
Thank you.
I waited patiently.
Yes. Or on Facebook, they can follow me, Toni Homeperm.
And yeah, that brings us to another conclusion of God'll Get You for That Walter. And
Yes,
you will
it
hear
does.
us next time.
Next week.
I'm not going to say see you because I know that you'll...
They can't see us.
They can't see us.
Not on this platform. Ah! Parental abuse!
Somebody call EPS. Somebody call EPS. But we'll see you next time on another episode of God Will Get You for That Walter. I'm Tom Catt, and this is Toni Homeperm. Have a great night, kids.
Good night, everyone.